In the vast emptiness between galaxies, where stars were born and died like fireflies in an endless night, there existed beings older than time itself. They called themselves the Eternals. They had watched the universe grow from a single spark into a garden of countless worlds. They had seen civilizations rise and fall like waves on a cosmic shore. Nothing surprised them anymore. Nothing made them feel wonder. They had become tired watchers of a universe that had stopped being interesting. The Eternals existed in a realm beyond normal space. They could see everything happening in the galaxy at once. They could watch a planet being born while simultaneously observing another one dying. For billions of years, they had every species, every civilization, every intelligent mind that ever emerged from the cosmic soup of existence. Most species followed predictable patterns. They would evolve, discover fire, build cities, create technology, and then either destroy themselves or fade away quietly. The Eternals had seen this cycle repeat millions of times. It was boring. It was expected. It was the natural order of things. Then they found Earth. At first, Earth seemed like any other planet. A small blue marble circling an average yellow star in an unremarkable corner of the Milky Way. The Eternals almost ignored it completely, but something made them look closer. Something about the creatures crawling on its surface caught their ancient attention. Humans were physically weak. They had no claws, no natural armor, no venom, no wings. They could not run as fast as many predators. They could not see in the dark. They could not survive extreme temperatures. By all logical calculations, they should have gone extinct long ago. But they did not. The Eternals watched with growing curiosity as these fragile beings spread across their planet. They saw humans face impossible winters with nothing but animal skins and fire. They watched them cross deadly oceans on boats made of wood. They observed them climb the highest mountains and survive the driest deserts. Every time nature threw a challenge at humanity, they found a way through it. This was interesting, but it was not remarkable, not yet. The true test came when the Void arrived. The Void was a force of pure destruction that moved through the galaxy like a disease. It consumed everything in its path. Stars, planets, entire solar systems vanished into its hungry darkness. No civilization had ever survived contact with the Void. The Eternals had watched hundreds of species try and fail. Most simply accepted their fate and waited for the end. Others tried to run, only to be caught eventually. A few fought back with their best weapons, but nothing worked. The Void was not a physical thing that could be destroyed. It was more like a concept, an idea of nothingness that erased reality itself. When the Void turned toward Earth, the Eternals gathered to watch. They expected the usual outcome. Humanity would panic, pray to their gods, and then disappear from existence like all the others. It would be over in days, perhaps hours. But humanity did something unexpected. They refused to accept it. When human scientists first detected the Void approaching their solar system, they did not fall into despair. Instead, they got to work. Every nation on Earth put aside their differences. Old enemies became allies overnight. Resources that had been hoarded were shared freely. The greatest minds from every corner of the planet came together with one purpose: survival. The Eternals leaned closer, intrigued. Human leaders stood before their people and spoke words that echoed across the planet. They did not promise victory. They did not lie about the danger. Instead, they said something that had never been said before in the history of the galaxy. They said that even if they could not win, they would make the Void remember them. They would fight so hard that the universe itself would never forget that humans had existed. The Eternals found themselves feeling something they had not felt in eons. They were impressed. Humanity began building. They constructed massive ships capable of carrying millions of people. But these were not evacuation vessels. They were war machines. Humans had studied the Void for months. They discovered that while it could erase matter and energy, it could not erase willpower. It could not consume determination. These were not physical things that followed the normal rules of the universe. Scientists theorized that if enough conscious minds focused on a single goal with enough intensity, they could create a barrier that the void could not penetrate. It was a crazy idea. It all known physics. Every logical calculation said it was impossible. Humans did not care about what was impossible. They created the Unity Network, a system that connected every human mind on Earth into a single consciousness, not erasing individuality but joining together while remaining separate. Billions of people thinking as one, fighting as one, refusing to give up as one. The void arrived at the edge of the solar system. It moved like a living shadow, swallowing everything in its path. The outer planets vanished one by one. Jupiter, with all its massive size, disappeared in moments. Then Saturn, then Uranus and Neptune. The darkness crept closer and closer to Earth. Human ships flew out to meet it, not to attack but to slow it down, to buy more time. Millions of volunteers piloted vessels directly into the void, knowing they would be erased from existence. They did not hesitate. They did not cry. They simply did what needed to be done because their species needed more time. The Eternals watched in stunned silence. They had never seen anything like this. No species had ever willingly sacrificed so many of its members for the sake of others. It was irrational. It was foolish. It was beautiful. The void consumed the ships and their brave pilots, but each vessel bought precious minutes. Each sacrifice gave the people on Earth more time to prepare the Unity Network. And when the darkness finally reached Mars, humanity was ready. 5 billion minds joined together as one. They did not pray for help from outside forces. They did not beg the universe for mercy. Instead, they simply refused. They refused to be erased. They refused to be forgotten. They refused to accept that their story was over. The collective will of humanity hit the void like a wall of pure defiance. The Eternals stood up from their eternal thrones. For the first time in countless ages, they moved. They gathered around Earth, watching something that should not have been possible. The void stopped. It had never stopped before. Not once in all the billions of years it had existed. It consumed and moved forward. That was its nature. That was its purpose. But now it hung in space, unable to advance, unable to retreat. Inside the Unity Network, humans felt the pressure of absolute nothingness pressing against their minds. Many wanted to give up. The weight of the void was crushing. It whispered to them that resistance was pointless, that they were small and meaningless, that the universe would continue without them and nothing would change. But a mother thought about her children and refused to let them be forgotten. A soldier thought about the friends he had lost and refused to let their sacrifices mean nothing. A child thought about the future they wanted to see and refused to let it be taken away. An old woman thought about all the generations that had come before and refused to let their struggles be erased. These individual thoughts merged into a single overwhelming force, not just survival instinct but something deeper: love, hope, stubbornness, the absolute refusal to surrender that had defined humanity since the first human ancestor had looked at a predator and decided to fight back instead of running. The void began to crack. The Eternals gasped. It was a sound that had not been heard in the higher realms since the universe was young. They moved even closer, unable to believe what they were seeing. Humanity pushed harder. Every person on Earth screamed without making a sound. They poured everything they had into the Unity Network. Their dreams, their memories, their love, their anger, their hope, their fear, everything that made them human became a weapon. The void shattered. It exploded outward in a wave of pure white light. The darkness that had consumed countless civilizations was broken into a billion pieces, each fragment scattered across the universe, too weak to ever reform. The threat that had haunted the galaxy for eons was destroyed by a species that had only existed for a cosmic heartbeat. When it was over, the Unity Network dissolved. 5 billion people fell to their knees, exhausted but alive. They had won. Against every prediction, against every calculation, against the very nature of existence, they had won. The Eternals stood in their realm completely silent. They had watched the universe for billions of years. They had seen empires rise and fall. They had witnessed the birth and death of gods, but they had never seen anything like this. One of the Eternals, the oldest among them, finally spoke. His voice echoed through dimensions as he said that in all their existence, they had never encountered a species quite like humans. Other races accepted the limits of what was possible. They worked within the rules of the universe and accepted defeat when those rules said they could not win. But humans did not follow rules. They did not accept limits. When the universe told them something was impossible, they simply tried harder until it became possible. The Eternal continued, saying that perhaps they had grown too old. Perhaps they had watched for too long without participating. Humans had reminded them of something they had forgotten. The universe was not a fixed thing to be observed. It was a canvas to be painted on, a challenge to be overcome, a story to be written. Another Eternal suggested that they should intervene, help humanity advance, guide them to greater heights, but the oldest one shook his head. He said that humans did not need their help. Humans did not need anyone's help. That was the whole point. Down on Earth, humanity celebrated. They mourned those they had lost. They rebuilt what had been damaged, and they looked up at the stars with new eyes. They had faced the greatest threat in galactic history and had refused to accept defeat. If they could do that, what else could they do? The answer, of course, was anything. In the years that followed, humanity spread across the stars. They encountered other civilizations that had heard whispers of the species that had defeated the void. Some them as gods, others feared them as monsters, most simply watched in amazement as humans continued to do impossible things. They built cities on worlds that should not have supported life. They created technologies that broke the understood laws of physics. They brought peace to regions that had known only war for, and whenever someone told them that something could not be done, they smiled and did it anyway. The Eternals continued to watch, but now they watched with hope instead of boredom. They had found something worth paying attention to, a species that reminded them why the universe was worth caring about. And somewhere in the depths of space, the scattered fragments of the void trembled, not because they were reforming, but because they remembered. They remembered the species that had refused to accept defeat, the species that had looked into the face of absolute oblivion and had simply said no. Humans had done the impossible, and the entire universe would never forget it.